Hey, welcome to Math. Mr. Jorgens here. Today we're going to be talking about section 7.8 on factoring polynomials. This is going to be a part 1. And part 1 is going to be specifically about a method called factoring by grouping. There's kind of two pretty distinct parts of section 7.8. The first being factoring by grouping, and the second one will be factoring completely polynomials. So today we're just focusing on factoring by grouping. It's going to be factoring things with 4 terms in it. So we've been factoring mostly trinomials, so polynomials with 3 terms. Today we're going to be looking at factoring things with 4 terms, or polynomials with 4 terms. So stay tuned for learning. There will be a few questions for you along the way. All right, so today we're going to be looking at polynomials with 4 terms. And when we're factoring polynomials with 4 terms, grouping is the only method that we're going to be able to use for factoring. We don't have any other method for factoring with 4 terms. So you can see the terms 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. And so the way that the grouping method works is I'm going to group my first pair of terms and I'm going to group my second pair of terms. So when I do that, I have x to the third plus 3x squared. And I have 2x plus 6. So I've grouped my first pair of terms, I've grouped my second pair of terms. Now, once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and factor a GCF out of the first pair, so the red kind of parentheses, and then a GCF out of the second pair, the blue parentheses. So my GCF out of the red parentheses, the biggest thing that divides both, I can take out 2 x's out of both. There's an x squared in both parts. So I can actually factor out an x squared here. And then x squared times x makes x to the third, doing kind of like a reverse distributive back in. And then x squared times a plus 3 will make a plus 3x squared. Then I want to find the GCF of the blue parentheses, so I need to find the biggest thing that divides both 2x and 6. So find the GCF of 2x and plus 6, biggest thing that divides both, and enter your answer when you're ready. Yeah, hopefully you put a plus 2, positive 2, because 2 divides both 2x and 6, and then multiplying back in, I'd have 2 times x and 2 times a plus 3. Now the grouping part is that you notice that the same part inside the parentheses came out both sides, right? I have x plus 3 as my part in the parentheses on both parts. So we're going to have the common part, and then we're going to have the GCFs, right? And so really what we can do is we can count up how many x plus 3s I have. So the amount of x plus 3s that I have is x squared plus 2 of them, right? And so my kind of group term here would be x squared plus 2 times x plus 3. So the kind of the red GCF and the blue GCF makes one of the factors, and the second factor makes that common term to both of them. So the part that was left inside the parentheses, the x plus 3, makes the other factor. All right, so that method is called factoring by grouping. If we see things with 4 terms factoring by grouping, that's going to be the method that we're going to have to use in Algebra 1. All right, so we're going to take a look at this one now. Again, 4 terms, so we're going to be factoring by grouping. We're going to factor x to the third minus 4x squared plus 3x minus 12. So whenever we're factoring by grouping, my first step is I'm going to pair terms 1 and 2, and I'm going to pair terms 3 and 4 together. When I do that, I get x to the third minus 4x squared as my first pair, and 3x and minus 12 as my second pair. So if I'm looking at my red pair here, my GCF of x to the third and minus 4x squared My GCF again would be x squared because I can pull two x's out of each term here. And when I multiply that back in, x squared times x makes x to the third, and x squared times a minus 4 makes a minus 4x squared. Once I do that, I'm going to need to find the GCF of my blue terms, so my GCF of 3x and minus 12. So go ahead and find the greatest common factor of 3x and minus 12. That's the biggest thing that divides both evenly. And enter your answer when you're ready. Yeah, plus 3. And multiplying back in, plus 3 times x makes 3x. And plus 3 times a minus 4 makes a negative 12. Now, the good news, if we do this whole process and that x minus 4 does not match, then that means we made a mistake somewhere. And we need to go back and retry it. Now, most of the time in this class, it's going to be rigged to work. If you come out with a part that's not x minus 4 for both, not the same part for both, it could just mean that it does not factor by grouping, which is definitely possible. But for this class, if you're getting something with 4 terms, grouping is going to work. So I've got my group term, my x squared plus 3, counting up the number of x minus 4s that I have. And then I have that common part, the x minus 4, that was the factor left after the GCF on both sides. So my answer then is x squared plus 3 times x minus 4. All right, let's try a third one, and this one I want you to try. So we're going to factor x to the third plus 5x squared plus 2x plus 10. That's the polynomial for you to factor. So go ahead and factor that by grouping. Again, you're going to pair those terms up and find the GCFs. And once you do that, enter your answer when you are ready. All right, so pairing those terms up, we look like this. Of my first pair, my GCF would be x squared because they both have 2 x's, so x squared times x, and then x squared times a plus 5. Second pair, that GCF is going to be 2 because 2 divides both 2x and 10. So I get 2, and again, when you multiply, you should have gotten x plus 5. So then grouping that term together, I'm going to get x squared plus 2 multiplied by x plus 5. So that's kind of our procedure there for factoring by grouping. Hopefully you're able to follow along with that. All right, we have one more example to look at, and these are kind of going to be the tougher problems that are on there. And you'll notice that we have both x's and y's, and we don't have numbers on this one. So there are going to be some problems where we are just dealing with the letters, and these ones are a little trickier because we're going to need to potentially rearrange some things in order to be able to make this work. Now, if you notice, there's only 2 terms with a y in it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange the polynomial. So I'm going to write it in the order where the y's kind of end up coming out next to each other. So I'm going to have x squared plus, I'm going to rearrange my second and third term. So plus x plus y plus xy. And that's going to allow me to kind of then, when I group them, have a potential GCF in that third and fourth term. So now my third and fourth terms, when I go to factor out a GCF, they'll both have a y in there. So now when I look at it, my first 2 terms both have an x. So I can factor an x out of my first kind of pair of terms here. X times x makes x squared, and x times a plus 1 makes a plus x. And then for my second pair of terms, I'd have y, and then y times 1 would make 1y, and y times a plus x would make an xy. Now what you should notice is these are really similar here, but they're just written kind of in reverse. So x plus 1 is the same as 1 plus x. That's the commutative property. So I'm going to rewrite my second one as x plus 1 because they really mean the same thing. So I have x times x plus 1 plus y times x plus 1. And that's going to leave us with the common factor x plus 1, and then that grouped factor. What would the grouped factor be there using the GCF? Figure that out based on the previous step and enter your answer when you're ready. Yeah, hopefully you put x plus y because I have x and then I have plus y as my group term. So we can factor that as x plus y times x plus 1. I definitely like doing them more when there's numbers in them. When you get to algebra 2, the most likely way you'll use this is the part with numbers, but we should be aware of how to do it with two variables as well, right? So hopefully this was a good start on section 7.8 for us. It definitely covers the half of the section that's on factoring by grouping. Tomorrow, or I guess in 2 days, we'll cover the second half of section 7.8, which is all about factoring polynomials completely. Hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time.